So I've got an estimate too, so.
Legs are hot.
Okay. It's 8:30, we can go ahead and get started with the Kalamazoo Water System Utility Policy Committee meeting. And is there anyone else from the city coming, do you know? No, okay. Right, and just, there's coffee, there's a machine over against the wall if anybody's interested.
Mayor did indicate that he was coming today, so he might just be slightly behind.
Okay, thank you. And then there's a sign-in sheet that has circulated. If you haven't signed it, please do so. Morning. We're calling this meeting to order and setting, next item is to set the agenda. Any changes or corrections?
Make a motion to set the agenda as presented.
I'll support.
There's a motion by Crum Wheat and a second by John Crum to set the agenda as presented. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is acceptance of the July 10th, 2025 draft minutes.
I think
I
there was
skipped
an
one.
introduction, yeah.
I skipped one, actually. Introductions and guests, let's go back. We have some new people here today, so why don't we go around the table here first?
Tom Wheat, member of the UPC, appointed by the Regional Commission.
James Baker, I'm a City Kalamazoo staff member. I'm the Public Services Director and City Engineer, and I'm a non-member.
John Crum, Regional Commission appointee for the UPC.
William Rowland, UPC, to City Kalamazoo.
Peter Hefner, appointed by the Regional Commission.
Jeff Chamberlain, one of the representatives with the City of Kalamazoo.
David Anderson, City of Kalamazoo, UPC member.
Libby Heine Cogswell, UPC member appointed by the Regional Commission. And
Mark Elliott, UPC alternate, retired municipal engineer.
Jeff Sorensen, Cooper Township Supervisor and Chair of the Regional Commission.
Anna Crandall, City of Kalamazoo, Assistant City.
thank you.
Gary Vanders, Charleston Township.
Christina Hutchings, Ross Township.
Emily Minema, Texas Township.
And
Good morning, David Markwood, new Deputy City Manager for Kalamazoo.
welcome, thank you. And then online, we also have about 10 individuals. I'm gonna state the names just because it gets so awkward trying to. We have Joey Murphy from Stantec, Bear Priest from Richland Township, Brett Paget from Comstock Township, Sherry Bell, Oshtemo Township, Danica Katz from Stantec, Joe Bonholm, the City of Kalamazoo, Nish Patel, Stantec, and Valletta Sellers Evans from the City of Kalamazoo. Welcome, everyone. Next item is acceptance of the July 10th minutes.
So moved, David.
Second. Peter.
There's a motion by David Anderson and a second by Peter Hafner to accept the July 10th, 2025 minutes as presented. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is public comment. Anyone present today wishing to make a statement, either present in person or online? Hearing none and seeing no raised hands, we will continue with unfinished business, agenda item 6. And 6A is the 2026 water rate setting. And we have Stan Tech here, and is there any introduction to that?
Yeah, good morning, Danica Katz here. Can I go ahead and share the slides to go ahead and present those? Is everyone able to see those okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. As I mentioned, I'm Danica Katz with Stantec. I've also got Nish and Joey as well from our team. Today we're going to present the summary of the financial plan and the cost of service follow-up from our last UPC meeting. And I'll walk through the findings there. So I'll start with the financial plan. We've got a slide here that talks about some of the assumptions utilized in the study. So from an operating expense perspective, we've utilized the city's fiscal year 25 budget as the starting point. Staff's still preparing the 26 budget, and so therefore we're just utilizing 25 for our projections in the forecast. We've also reviewed each expenditure line item with city staff to determine inflation factors for that 10-year forecast. From a capital expenditures perspective, we've got all of the annual payments for existing debt service brought in, as well as the 10-year capital plan provided by the city, which is approximate from $40 million to $80 million annually, with an assumed execution of 75% for that projection period. And that is funded with a mix of borrowing as well as cash and reserves. From a revenue perspective, we've also utilized the fiscal year 2025 budget, as well as an analysis for growth in customers. So that's showing for approximately 1.1% annually through discussions with city for anticipated growth and development. And then as far as rate revenue projections, we've utilized the year-end estimates for fiscal year 25. And so that's what's flowing through the model. And then here we just have a presentation kind of our summary panel for the financial plan. So what you'll see there at the top is the recommended rate increase for 26 of 5%. We're also showing some additional FTEs here throughout the financial model in 26 of about 3 FTEs. You can also see that with all of the assumptions that are in this model now, we'll be meeting the debt service coverage requirement, as well as in this top left graph here, you can see that we're maintaining cash balances above that reserve target, which is that black line there. And then we've just got the CIP spending down here, which shows that 75% execution. As well as a couple of other graphs here that show how those CIP projects are funded through the financial model. Okay. And then moving along, so what we've done is after we did the financial plan, we've taken the cost of service that we reviewed on our prior meeting. And we've taken that 5% increase and applied that to the cost of service for fiscal year 2025. And so what that shows here in the black line is the existing revenue for 2025, as well as the orange line, which is the cost of service for fiscal year 2025 for each customer class. And so, and this is with the 5% overall increase included. And so what this would show is that single family would need to go up slightly, multifamily also up slightly, commercial up slightly, and then industrial and seasonal would show a slight need for a decrease. I do want to mention that this is just a snapshot in time for 2025. Knowing that, costs may change as CIP gets finalized, as, customer data gets refined, and there's updates to that, there may be some, slight changes to this, that this is just a snapshot for fiscal year 25. So with that being said, we wanted to come to you and provide some options or alternatives. The last slide showed the full cost of service, and so that's this option A you could see here. So this would be the percent increase needed for each of the customer classes if it was going to get to full cost recovery. So that would be about a 9.2% on single family, a 0.6 on multifamily, 3.4 on commercial, and then, as I mentioned, industrial and seasonal would show as needing to go down. But we also wanted to provide some options, and through discussions with the city, knowing that, some of this data may change and some of the costs may change, just wanted to provide some alternatives that maybe got us closer to cost of service, but not quite fully there, knowing that some of those updates may be coming and there may be some future increases potentially coming, in the next handful of years. And so that's what you could see here with option B and option C are just two alternatives for you to consider that will get you the full revenue requirement. So you'll still get that 5% revenue. It's just getting the customer classes closer to their cost to serve and not quite there.
Dana,
So-
Beth,
Yeah, I'll pause.
on the
Pause
option,
there.
on the options B and C,
Mhm.
is there like some kind of meaning behind that, or how they were calculated, or?
Yeah, sure. So we had gone through and we know that we need to get the 5% overall revenue. And so that was a target for us, as well as just looking at each of the individual classes and how much revenue they needed to collect in order to get them to that full cost recovery. But for example, like you could see here, if we hold industrial, like if you look at option C, if we hold industrial and seasonal flat, knowing that there's some future increases, we would need to collect more revenue through the single family, multifamily, and commercial. And so that's where you start to see kind of the spread of percentages change. So it's just a few different scenarios where we still get to that 5% revenue and get each of the customer classes closer to their cost to serve. It's just not, fully there.
Is the seasonal, is that the summer sprinkling essentially?
Those would be irrigation meters, and there may be some accounts on there that also use water for cooling seasonally in the summertime.
I have a question. So is there some sort of statutory or other kind of expectation that you are going to have, once you do this evaluation, that you are going to adjust the rate according to the cost of that rate? Or do we have the full flexibility to say something like, no, we're going to boost one of these, even though the other, is not in that category, get enough revenue to cover the cost? We can do whatever we want then in terms of other rates, even if we're boosting the revenue above our cost project? So we got all kinds of flexibility there.
I
So-
don't know, I'm just understanding your question. It's a great one.
Yeah.
I can speak to that a little bit and then ask Danica for some follow-up. Broadly speaking, we have to set a rate that's reasonable based on the data and analysis that we've conducted, based on proportional cost and use of the system. So the cost of service analysis looks at all of our different metered accounts and all those different customer commodity classes. And what that customer cost of service analysis kind of showed us is that those residential accounts, we're talking about 5/8 meters and 1.25 meters on residential commodity accounts. Those accounts have a very high cost of service, a very high peaking factor, some as high as 600 to 800%. That means from throughout a year, their usage can be 8 times higher in the summer than maybe in the winter. Some of these other accounts, institutional, commercial, industrial, those are usually 2-inch meters and larger. A lot of those customers are pretty flat. Their usage is about the same throughout the year. When we look at how that impacts the system, Our average daily pumping across the system, if we annualize that for a whole year, is the low 20s, 20 to 22 million gallons per day. We, as a system, pump anywhere from 36, 38 million gallons a day, all the way down into the low 18s, to 20s. So from a system, we have to be able to support pump, wells, boost, towers, transmission mains. We've got to be able to support that high demand and have reliability and redundancy in place to meet that. And so there's a lot of costs that go into that. If as a system, we only ever had to pump 20 million gallons a day, every day, we would have less tanks, we'd have smaller transmission mains, we'd have less pump stations, we'd have less boosters and less wells. So there is a big cost component to satisfying those, transient and variable needs that single families are demanding on the system. So those costs should reflect that. That being said, we know that there are some, there is some noise in some of the data. We have seen tremendous amounts of data refinement over the last several years. Our folks in the commercial office have been doing a wonderful job of, cleaning up accounts, getting better reads, getting more accurate reads. Our smart meter program has been a big help for that, getting the system overall better data in so that we can make better decisions. We've got you've heard me talk before about an audit that's going to be focused just on the commercial accounts. We've had a lot of help drafting some RFQ language. We're probably going to be putting that out this fall, and we're going to be doing a lot of that work in spring and summer of next year. So that's likely going to result in some better data as well to really kind of clear up that picture of how you see this information in front of you. That all being said, this analysis is providing some guidance to us to say the costs in single family are more than what a 5% rate increase would cover. And the costs in commercial or industrial are probably a little bit less than what a 5% rate increase could cover. There is flexibility in that, and that's what we want to give the UPC some flexibility in these options, option A, option B, option C. Option A is the math as it comes out. That's plug and chug, those are what the numbers say. Option B is a little bit more discretion to say, look, we recognize what the math is telling us, but we also recognize that this is a complex system. The numbers are probably going to change next year, and we're confident that option B is also a reasonable approach that takes into account proportional use of the system and proportional cost. Option C is just kind of a little bit of a middle ground between A and B.
Question?
Thanks. I'm sorry, just to go off one thing. So I get that cost business, but I guess what I was kind of getting to is that there's an expectation that, cost is going to be relative to expense and that sort of thing. But from a, say, philosophical perspective, you could say, for example, not picking this one particular, seasonal is an extra. That's irrigation, that's a cherry on top. What our main job is to make sure that people in their homes have clean water. I mean, you could make that comment. Sure. And then you could say, as a result of my feeling that way, I'm going to say, let's crank up seasonal and let's keep that residential cost lower, because that's people that are paying that bill because they need to, have a drink and take a shower. But it seems like and we're sort of doing that a little bit. I mean, in essence, we're saying between A and B, that's like a 10% difference there that we're putting on top of seasonal. So we're already sort of making, like, I would say, that philosophical whatever kind of a decision. But how much flexibility do we have around that? I mean, because does that mean there could be like a class action suit from the seasonal users that say, hey, you're charging me way more than what the actual cost is based on your own records, and, under law, you can't do that, and you got to change a different rate. I mean, how does all that?
I think what you could do is, the rate study we looked at last meeting, or I think you call it the cost of service study, I think it can be calculated 30 different ways. And so they're trying to like proportionately say the cost of sprinkling includes these towers. We don't need them if they're not sprinkling, or et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of assumptions in there, and that, you know, this is what these folks do. I suspect you could have someone else make this calculation and it would be slightly different, or maybe more than slightly different. So I don't know that it's set in stone that this is, that cost of service study is trying to say, how should these costs be allocated? And they're using their professional judgment, input from the city to make the calculation. But I suspect if you had someone else calculate it, it's not gonna be these same numbers. It might be very close. So that's where it's like, is it reasonable? I don't know that you can say this firm always gets it exact. Yeah, that's just the way it has to be. I don't know that there's, you know, there's in stone, this is how you have to do it. You know, there's judgment in there. So they made this calculation and they say, we think it's really a little tweaked like this. But the data changes. With the study that we saw at the last meeting, they clearly said, well, you know, we used a 3-year average or what have you, but if you used a 4-year average, it's a different number. So, you know, if we feel overall, okay, they're saying seasonal is a little bit too high and the residential is a little bit too low. We hire them, they have professional judgment, you know, and we're counting on them. That, you know, we say, okay, let's get moving in that direction, but we want to see this again in 2 years or what have you, because we know we're getting better data out of the billing system, where in the past it wasn't as good. When we got together to discuss the rates, with Stantec, myself, James, Steve, there were, you know, if you look in your audit, you can see like the number of XYZ customers changed by 500 in a year from residential, and some of those numbers are plugged into this calculation. And that's just clearly the data's getting cleaner, right? They were in the wrong category. So I guess overall, I'm thinking this is what they're saying is a kind of the ballpark where we ought to be. But next year they make this calculation. I don't want to be saying, for me anyways, oh yeah, now it's swung the other way. Let's just add 5 or 10% to the other group. I would encourage that we would slowly approach on better numbers over time, theoretically. You know, we could go totally, this is what it said this year, well, let's see what it says next year. What if it says 10% the other way? We want to do that. Because it's not I mean, I don't know what you call it. I don't know what standards they follow. You know, I don't think there's a, you know, there is guidance out there, but you know, this is an estimate, and they're saying, hey, this looks a little out of line. But keep in mind, with that last packet, I think we saw some like wild swings. Do you recall? You weren't here. But in that last, I should pull it up. Like in some of the activity, like how much water was used and that type of thing, is so dependent on the weather, and they're basing things based on that information. So I don't know if that clarifies anything for anyone, but my thought is that number can change year to year. And so I would encourage not like, okay, go 100%.
And then we're set for.
Yeah, then next year it
May
swings
not be,
back 10%. Now what? You know, okay, let's change it again. You know, if it looks like we're a little low or a little high, let's kind of just slowly get there. But then let's look at this in 2 years or what have you. I mean, I would, you know, base that on James's judgment. As you get better data, in 2 years, we say, okay, it looks like we're actually right on line, or we're farther off, we need to do even more. I just think, I don't know what that cost of service study costs to begin with. But also the data may be, you know, as you get more smart meters in place, and we have, you know, 5 years of better data, these numbers could change, so. And Danica, correct me if, you know, if I'm out of line, but that's my personal thought, based on.
No, yeah, I agree. That's pretty spot on that, you know, the data is the best and most accurate data that we have at that point in time. But with refinements that come with adjustments in the data, as you mentioned, those numbers can shift. And so what you're seeing here may be kind of the results here at this point. But those can fluctuate, from year to year depending on the data that's provided.
Yeah, it would probably be very dependent on water usage. So if we get a lot of rain, and Mr. Wheat noted the other day that he just started watering because we got so much rain early on, that can impact this thing a lot.
Thank you, that was a good summary. My question is,
You have a
sorry,
question?
yeah.
Based on, James, a pumpage versus what we bill, how are we addressing unaccounted for?
Non-revenue water,
Yes.
we do account for that. A lot of non-revenue water comes from system flushing. We flush the system twice a year. Flushing is also our number one response to water quality complaints, so we track that as well. I can't recall off the top of my head where non-revenue water is in terms of the system, but it's the majority of all our non-revenue water is maintenance and operational use of water. We don't have a large amount of unmetered water due to leaks or system failures or something like that.
Fire service.
Yeah. Most everything's maintenance related in terms of non-revenue water.
Good question.
So the seasonal, I'm trying to understand that one. Is that a category that affects all the other categories? My recollection from seasonal is that when we looked at this years ago, it affected more what we called then the outside city.
I
Because
think
of the,
that seasonal was actually more in the city.
Seasonal is all throughout
okay,
throughout the service districts. Their seasonal accounts are predominantly commercial. Most residential accounts do all of their usage, including sprinkling, through their 1 1/4 inch meter. Most seasonal accounts are, commercial properties that have 2 services, 1 service that provides flow for the building and restrooms and that sort of thing, and then a separate meter for irrigation. There's also a small number of accounts that do use water for cooling. It's kind of an old technology, but it is used by some data centers that use water to cool, so they use large volumes of water in the summertime to cool the data centers.
thank you.
So, thank you, Peter, that's very good explanation of what we're trying to do here. We don't wanna
Yeah.
chase the peaks and valleys, we wanna try to maintain in between there. But James and Danica, you don't know what the difference between A, B, and C is, and you understand data better than we do, how clean it is or how clean it isn't, or what trends might be coming next year. Is there a recommendation from staff or professionals as to what would be, if we were going to not chase A, choose B or C, is there a recommendation for the smoother path?
Sure, I can talk on that topic a little bit. If you look at the options A, B, and C, you see there's a lot of variability between them. We'll note that each option is, kind of a complex equation to get to the same result. We're still shooting for 5% overall. If you look just at the bar charts, you see the overall volume and overall cost and from in terms of expense and revenue requirements from seasonal is very low. So you can make a big change in seasonal and it's not gonna impact you overall. So these numbers are all kind of interdependent. On the other hand, single family, that's the largest proportional share of the system. Small changes will make big impact there. Knowing the data, knowing that there's been a lot of refinements over the years and we still expect more refinements, my recommendation from a staff perspective would be a very the most muted or the slowest, lowest curve approach. And you see that in option B. It's kind of the most stable overall. It's kind of that middle of the road approach, and it also recognizes the, differences that we are seeing in the cost of service analysis. So between A, B, and C, from a staff perspective, I would recommend option B.
James, can you tell us how long has it been that it's been across the board? It must be 5 years at least, and I don't know how before that.
It's been longer than that.
Okay.
We, across the board, it's been at least since 2014-ish.
So a long time,
So
that
it's
just everybody gets the same.
It's been a long time. We've been aware of the kind of growing gap with single-family residential for a number of years now. We saw it during the last cost of service analysis. At that time, we said, okay, let's continue to pause to see where this is going. That gap continues to widen. And this year's cost of service analysis, we were really compelled that we needed to start to close that gap. We needed to start to address that gap, and this does seek to do that.
So, Danica, could you go back one slide, please?
Sure.
I think that's what James was just talking about. So this is the gap you're talking about, right?
That's correct.
It costs the system more money to provide water to single-family homes than what we're bringing in from those single-family homes. And the goal is, I would assume the goal is that those black and orange lines are equal for each category eventually.
Correct.
And
Correct.
so is the assumption then that once they do become, once the black and orange lines are equal, or the revenue coming in pretty equal to what it costs to provide services for that group, then are we then still then looking in the future of, okay, well, if it's gonna be a 5% increase, then everybody gets a 5% increase at that time?
Sure.
This is more of a catch-up.
Yeah, that's a good point. As long as the, orange line meets the black line, then we've kind of satisfied revenue requirements to expenses in that customer classification, and the, overall structural increase would work.
Thanks.
And option B is moving along that path?
Correct. Option B recognizes the work we're attempting to do here. It recognizes the apparent misalignment that we have between projected revenues and expenditures, and it seeks to correct that. And in our opinion, it's a reasonable approach, while also recognizing proportional cost and use of the system.
So this chart also illustrates relative proportion?
Yeah, it does, it's not intended to, strictly convey that, but it does, and you can kind of see overall, if you added every bar together, that's the overall system cost. And if you added every black bar together, that's the overall system revenue. So you can kind of see through interpretation that, seasonal is, probably 10% of overall system costs. We probably could create a different slide and maybe show that a little bit better, but you can kind of get there from this example as well.
My only comment about option B is that I don't like the idea of raising the single family any more than the 6.5%, but then on the multifamily side, I guess I would like to see that somehow more aggressive to get to what the actual cost appears, just because it seems like that's an impact to.
Sure. I will say they're all kind of related, so
Yeah.
if you pull on one, you're gonna have to push somewhere else. It's that Rubik's Cube. So if we're, let's say green is the color we're working on the Rubik's Cube, and that represents single family. If we turn it to the other side and we start moving multifamily around, that's gonna create more pressure back on single family again.
Is that where the pressure goes, or does it get spread out on all of them?
Because single family is the biggest piece of this whole pie, most all the pressure comes back to single family.
So question on the cost side, is depreciation expense one component of cost?
There is a component of
Yes.
that. in there.
And how much is that? Because I presume we're spending a lot on single-family right now, correct? I mean, we're spending millions on lead service line replacement and all that. Does that move that bar much, that depreciation expense for the hundreds of millions or whatever we're investing on that side?
I'd have to ask Danica what our depreciation is right now with respect to overall revenue requirements. I don't know if it's.
I believe, I can look, I don't know off the top of my head, but I believe it was around 6 million.
7.
So that's about, let's see,
And-
from my
and
level, maybe
this-
around 15%.
15%?
I'll have to confirm that number, but
Is that get distributed based on the parts of the system that we're investing in?
It gets distributed based on the parts of the system that are depreciated. So depreciation's over an asset that was put in the ground previously.
Yeah.
And so those are kind of fixed in place.
Yeah.
New capital doesn't always align with old depreciation.
Right.
Because
So
we've
it's
got so many
six-
different asset classes.
$6,000 per household expense of replacing a lead service line, for example.
10 grand per household.
What's that?
10 grand per household.
10 grand per household. Just trying to keep it low.
Danica, in your cost of service study, you're using the depreciation?
yes, yep.
So that's where it would matter for the allocation.
Yeah. Okay, so I was just gonna go back to my other kind of just food for thought here, or whatever, is that, you're talking about a goal of an alignment, Jeff, where the orange and black all the way across the system meet each other, and that's the North Star we're heading for, or something like that. I mean, I could think that you could make an argument, and I'm not making it necessarily, for another kind of North Star where you say, well, what's our most vulnerable category here? Let's say single-family residential or whatever. And then our desire, our North Star is to have commercial, industrial, and seasonal subsidize that. The pure residential. I mean, that'd be a way to look at it. I don't know if we can do that if we wanted to or not, but I don't know, it's just something that's crossed my mind, especially as we're looking at things like, if we're going to option A, it's like, hey, we're cutting a break for industrial, and, and we're pushing a, over 9% increase on residential. I mean, there's something about that kind of just doesn't sit right, even though I get it. That's where the biggest cost is, and that's where we're trying to get to. So I don't know what to say more about that, but just kind of commenting on that feeling when you look at it and think about telling the story,
Danica, when you make that cost of service study and you're using depreciation, are you factoring in how much was grant funded?
Yes, yeah, we do take that into account.
That has to be depreciated also.
But it would be maybe excluded from their calculation, which makes some sense,
Correct, yep.
Who else paid for it, so.
Yeah.
You're talking about like contributed
So
assets
that-
and things of that nature?
Well, yeah, and I think so. Some of that lead service line was, quite a lot, I think, was grant funded. That's just what I think. I'm not positive.
So, yeah, and those depreciation amounts on those lead service lines, and I don't know if those are 50-year or 100-year that we have them right now, we're not paying so much right now in depreciation for them. Most of our depreciation costs are for stuff that's already in the ground.
And it sounds like they're excluding that lead service line if somebody else paid.
Sure, and there's a big portion from grants on that, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
And if you've seen this over time, it wouldn't be the lead service line doing it.
Right. And I'll also say, we're spending a lot of money on smart meters. That's a good thing for the system. In our capital, I know that's another agenda item, but there's a lot of money going to meters. We're really gonna ramp that program up. So single family has got the service replacements and the meters, and that is hitting them. The other component, like I talked about, is that peaking factor. Residential families we're seeing can use 6 or 8 times more water in the summer than they do in the winter, where the commercial, multifamily, industrial, they're more flatline. So there's a lot of things happening to that single-family customer that are driving those costs up.
I appreciate your discussion of moving some money around in terms of subsidizing to make it less painful for residential, but I think from a rates, I'm not a rates expert and I'm not an attorney, but I think that the rates need to be reasonably proportional. Without a subsidize, we can't, because that would open the system up to challenge, I believe. If somebody decided, I mean, we could do it until somebody sued us. And I don't think that we want to get there. And so, Peter, you were more involved in this process than any of us, other than.
Well, James is very involved.
No, yeah, you're 100% involved, you're 50% involved.
Right. So I participated with Stan Tech just in a Zoom meeting with James and Steve, and we went through some items, such as capital and how much debt financing there was gonna be, and when are we gonna spend down the cash that was on hand? And there was talk that a slower spend down of cash is more consistent with the fact that they're using like this DWSRF. They gotta pay the bills first, then they get the funding. It's not like they get the bond and they get $50 million. They gotta spend the dollars first, so we need some reserves there for that. But ultimately, to bring that reserve down to target, and it's on the slide with the balances, and that'll happen in a few years. There were some things that were uncompleted in the process. I think it was the extent of some bonding, or I can't even really recall, but there were a couple of things you were gonna work with Stan Tech on.
Yeah, we had some of the capital plan items are moving around, just, our capital plan in general is a living document, although, once a year we submit that to the UPC for approval, to the city for approval, it then becomes part of the annual budget. So there are kind of like fixed points in time when we're really diving into CIP. So there was some movement in that we had to do some data refinement on. That's been done. So everything that you see in front of you has kind of gone through those multiple iterations of refinement that Peter's talking about.
And during that process, it was only like an hour and 20 minutes, so you see like 7 slides. I've seen these slides. They would change something and we'll see what it would do. But when they completed the updated information with James, I was to receive like the underlying data to look at. I did not. So I would just say, I had a conversation with them and they changed some numbers, but I don't know what's underlying it. But I would like to see it. Did you, James, get that underlying, or does anybody look at it, or you just?
I didn't go through the full model, no.
Can I?
Yeah, we can have Danica send that to you, that's no problem.
I just would, just in case there's something that's like way out of line, and I could contact James and say, hey, this maybe needs to be looked at. We don't have to vote on anything here today.
Yeah.
But I was to receive that, and I didn't, and I was fine. I was thinking they were working through this process, and we have another month to make a vote. But I'd like to just see the underlying data. It's got every line of your transaction or your budget and your past history and what's being projected and what rates are there. I would say that the inflation rate in this calculation, I think overall was with wages, and there's different categories, it was 4.2% overall. Some were higher, some were lower, categories like wages, benefits, whatever. So 4.2% increase in the operating costs theoretically, and we're talking about a 5% rate increase.
Right.
That rate increase likely could be quite lower. Let's take a look at this capital plan, because it's hundreds of millions of dollars, and last year water had revenue of 38 million, and this year we're gonna spend 100 plus. And next year we're gonna spend 40. That's more than we even bring in. The next year it's another 40, whatever. But when we look at it, just realize that capital plan is driving the bus to a large extent. We're trying to ramp everything up to cover that debt service.
one bigger picture question. Danica, I assume you work with other water systems too. The information we're looking at here is an overall 5% for the entire system. How does that compare with other water systems that you're seeing around the country? Is 5% kind of in the ballpark? Is it high, low?
Great question. Yeah, so we can put something together maybe for the next meeting, but sometimes we'll do a benchmarking survey for surrounding utilities. It can vary across many different areas and also across systems, depending on the operating needs, whether systems need large capital infrastructure improvements, whether their system's outdated, things of that nature. So it can vary. I've seen some much, much higher. I've seen some very consistent compared to the 5%. So if it would be helpful, we could prepare some benchmarking of surrounding utilities and kind of see what those upcoming rate increases may be and provide that to UPC on the next meeting.
Sure, if that's not too much work. And again, just to kind of keep in mind, I think it's always, there always seems to be a challenge because we're talking about a 5% system-wide rate. But then we start talking about a single family or multifamily, then it might be different than that number. But then add them all together, they get you back to that 5%.
That's correct. Yep. Since we're looking at it from a cost of service perspective between the interclasses, I would say the 5% is more of a 5% overall revenue increase on the system, whereas the percentages are unique to each customer class and the increase that would be recommended or whatever is selected.
Right.
So just one last question here for clarification, which is only tangentially related to this, but when we install the infrastructure for seasonal meter, which may only be used 2 or 3 months out of a year, we are in essence capturing the cost of the installation in our meter fee. And there's really we could put that pipe and that meter in there and never run a drop of water through it, but we are charging for that meter on a monthly basis, whether it's used or not. And is that charging process for that meter taking care of our capital investment for the installation?
We believe so. So there's the construction charge to put the meter in that should cover the construction, that should balance out. There's a system capacity buy-in fee charge for that meter based on meter size.
Yep.
That should bring that customer current to all the net present value of the system as it is, or net book value, excuse me. That meter rate then, so that meter is based on a meter rate by its size, and then there's also the commodity fee. So that commodity fee, seasonal pays a different commodity rate than single family. There's, if we had the ordinance in front of us, you could see that the commodity rate for single family and multifamily, as well as institutional, are lower rates. Commercial and seasonal are higher rates. So that seasonal use is, every meter used comes at a higher rate than what the single family usage is.
But in essence, those are two entirely different activities.
Correct. They're just completely separate, just as you see on our charts here, they're not together.
Yeah. Okay. This is just for information purposes today, then, right?
Yes, good discussion. Anything else?
I would just point out, when we looked at the financial statements in last month, the water fund, the operation and maintenance expense of the water fund, which doesn't include depreciation, is $16 million. And so when we put in these inflation factors for like labor and chemicals and things of that nature, we're not in, and the total revenue is $38 million, so we're only inflating by 4.2%, about half the revenue that comes in or expense. So again, that differential, so if you took half of it, you're only going up 2-point-something% from a revenue perspective. So the rest of that is this next capital. Capital is a big, big number that is impacting rates as well. If not, theoretically, no capital, maybe you could get away with the 2-point-something% rate increase.
Okay.
Just theoretically.
Thank you, Danica.
Of course. Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is the capital improvement plan. Put that on the screen. City want to walk through this, or how to?
Sure, yeah, we can do that. Like we've said earlier, the capital plan is kind of a living document. Projects do kind of move around year over year. Projects in the action year, which would be the current year that you're in, are pretty well refined in terms of their costs and their schedule. And we expect projects in, whatever current year category to be going out to bid and starting. Some projects don't come to fruition in the current year that they're programmed in and might get bumped out a year. They might have to undergo some cost refinements or other things. That speaks to our execution rate. So the capital program from a rate perspective has a 75% execution rate. So for every $100 million that you see in the capital program, we're only going to plan to bring in $75 million of bonds to cover it. And that speaks to some of the projects might not start on time. Some might get pushed around to be better coordinated, that sort of thing. The projects are kind of grouped together by type, water infrastructure, water source and pumping. We've got some other programs. Most of all these projects you've seen before. Nearly all of these projects that are under water infrastructure are water main projects, either water main, gas water main replacement, new water main for water main loops like in the townships, water main that is coordinated with other street projects. So a lot of all this water main work is heavily coordinated between both city and road commission as well as MDOT projects. And just to kind of talk through a few of them that we've got coming up. Burdick Street, that's a pretty big project in the city of Kalamazoo that's scheduled to go on in 2026 and 2027. We've got two projects in Comstock Township. We've got an NAV loop and an ML and 35th Street loop. Those projects start in 2026 and go into 2027 and also start in 2027. We're putting a lot of energy and effort into wells. That's something that really need to focus on. We have like station 17 and 18, which we took out of service to the PFAS, so there's more demand on some of the existing components of the system, and there's a ever-present need to continue to rehab wells and invest in new wells, so you're gonna see that program starting to accelerate. And of course, we spoke about smart meters, but we're really starting to accelerate our smart meter program as well. So I'm not gonna go through all these projects here, it's quite an exhaustive list, but I'm happy to go into detail on any one of them, or to talk through any questions anybody might have on it.
So some of this is regulatory compliance?
Sure.
How much?
Yeah, so
Pump station.
that's a good point. So if you go to water source and pumping, and there's, I'm kind of flipping through pages here. There's, probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 45 projects, give or take, on that list. And across the entire program, so up and down, left to right, you're about $225 million in that program. And that's pretty much all regulatory. That's really, we're getting to some major components of station reliability. That means when we have thunderstorms, we can't lose stations, so stations have to have generators, stations have to have modern electrical systems that meet arc flash requirements. We've got to be able to transfer those onto generators, that sort of thing. We also have optimized corrosion control. That's a consent order with Eagle, administrative consent order that we entered into. You've got things like PFAS treatment that's on here. You see that we've got $51 million just going to Station 5 and 14 consolidation. You've got some other station consolidations on here and some other upgrades, just really focusing on station reliability, station redundancy, and then enhancing treatment at stations, which gets to that regulatory performance aspects.
Yeah, so I guess my point in asking is that the system doesn't have a choice but to do. You might have a choice how quickly you do it, I don't know, on the consent order, there might be some timelines, as well as the lead service line replacement. What is the date, like 2040? Is that when it has to be completed by?
So there's some EPA updated, so there was a 2018 Michigan Lead and Copper rule which set 2040 as the date that we had to complete. EPA just passed a new lead and copper rule that was very similar to Michigan's, but it brings down the date for the action level. We're at 12 now, that's gonna go to 10. That's been accelerated. We had to do the distribution service materials inventory. That was accelerated. That was due last October. And EPA has a 10-year replacement requirement. Under our current pace, heavily supported by DWSRF funding, and what some of these last projects on the list take us out to 2029. We're right now second in the state for that program. So we should, if we continue with that, the projects that are in this, we should be completed with all lead service line replacement in the system by 2029. And we're sitting pretty good right now with Eagle funding to do that.
So all of this capital plan, the mandatory expenditures are.
Yeah, so I'd say pretty much all.
37%, I just pondered the numbers,
There we go.
37%.
Did you add the lead into that
Yeah.
one? Okay,
You
yeah.
got 603
Perfect.
total.
Yeah.
So you had 225 out of the 603,
How much is mandatory?
37%.
37.
The water infrastructure component, that's your cast iron main replacement, your main replacement projects, coordinated with street projects, and transmission looping in the townships. Those programs are really kind of following best practice from an asset management perspective. If we do a full reconstruction, like we're doing on streets downtown, Kalamazoo Avenue, Michigan Avenue, Burdick Street, we don't recommend reconstructing an entire street and leaving brittle, break risk water main in the ground. You can do it, but there's probably gonna be some more expense on the operations side when we go through water main breaks. Also, just to kind of bring us back to where we were in February, our water main break occurrences per day were exceeding the days of the year. So, February, 28th, give or take, we were, 59 days into the year, and we were sitting at like 65 water main breaks. There is a time when the number of water main breaks in a season exceeds our staff operational capacity. And a lot of this program is really going after our most vulnerable mains. Those are our mains that have the highest break history and the mains that are most likely to break in the future. We've done a lot of work from an asset management perspective to try to identify what those pipelines are. Anna's been working with a firm out of England? Out of England with some really sophisticated technology that analyzes system pressure, pipe age, pipe material. Am I forgetting something?
We have an imported condition.
Imported road condition as well. And so that gives us an overlay of kind of our most vulnerable mains and mains that we should be programming together with our capital program. That's Resitech. And we don't have anything queued up today, but we'd be happy to, show you some demonstrations of that, kind of how we picked some of these things. On the township side of it, there's a lot of development and demands on the system that if they're not managed properly, they lead to water quality issues, they lead to pressure issues, and they lead to challenges from an operational and regulatory perspective. And we're seeking to address a lot of these here with some of these loop closures and kind of cleaning up some of the expense of our system to operate better, improve water quality for customers. And then the other advantage of that is actually positions us better to support continued industrial growth. Some of that work Tom's been involved with us on some of that stuff in the township. There's a lot of investment in Comstock Township, and Comstock Township we're seeing is really kind of starting to take off from a commercial development, industrial development perspective as well.
James, on here, there's a line item for a new water station, Station 38. Could you just remind us where that would be?
Sure, that's in Oshtemo. That's out at the corner of 6th and G. Oshtemo's unique in that there's no water in Oshtemo right now. So all the water that Oshtemo uses is boosted in. So we run pumps, 24/7 to push water in Oshtemo. There's tanks, there's towers in Oshtemo, so they do float on those towers, but there's not a source of water in Oshtemo. If we're able to put that station in service, that kind of provides water in Oshtemo, and if we're able to baseload that station, Oshtemo's kind of our highest point, we could then bleed that water down, so it'd actually be more economical to source water in Oshtemo and then bleed it down to other jurisdictions below that.
Is that located where the tank is?
No, it's north of the tank,
G and 6,
G and 6, yeah.
you already have the
We have the property, yeah.
done testing and
And
all
we've
that.
got some test wells.
Again, we're looking at a really aggressive capital plan, which costs a lot of money. But then as we look at it over years, and this goes back to Tom's point too, there's a lot of it that's regulatory mandated. But then when you look through the list, you're just saying, okay, this station needs to be upgraded, this station needs to be upgraded, this part of the system needs a new loop line going out here because there's growth going on in that part of the country, or the county. This needs a generator, this needs to be consolidated, so they're all, I don't see anything in here, quite honestly, that strikes me as like, yeah, that's a little crazy, but these are all like upgrading the system to keep it running the way it should be, and meeting our regulations that we're required to meet. And then I think what we've seen though over time is, okay, this goes all the way out to 3031. Some of these projects might shift a little bit. We might get a grant for this project, but as a plan, this lays out, I think, for all of us to see, yeah, this is the work that needs to get done over like the next, nearly 10 years, not quite, but 6, to keep the system running.
Sure.
Do you still have a comment?
I'd just ask, I think there are some projects that won't be done unless we get some funding. Are there any of those on here or not? I think that was the case, wasn't it? There was like some, you don't do it if you don't get a grant or whatever.
Are you speaking like CIA funding?
No, just like a special,
Yeah, I think we've really been handling like lead services in that, and we've been adding some other components to those lead service projects. So we've been adding, some of these loops or some cast iron main replacement or some of the station improvements. It makes just for a better overall project plan. And this has happened to us before where we submitted and didn't get funded by Eagle. And when that happens, we just push that whole project out.
Okay.
And there's still time in our lead, back to your point, Tom, there is time in our lead service replacement schedule. If that does happen to us, where Eagle says, we just didn't score high enough across the entire state of Michigan, we're still confident we've got a really good project plan, very competitive, but we would just push all that work out a year or 2 years or something like that. That same concept's happening to us in wastewater. We're not here to talk about wastewater today, but our big sludge project, that didn't get funded by Eagle, so that's getting pushed off. We're so confident in the project, we're probably gonna make some changes to it to make it a little bit more competitive, but we'll just bring that back and put that back in. So that, to your point, Peter, that is correct. Some of these projects the need's still there, we still have got window and flexibility, and we're really confident in that DWSRF program, even if we might need to go another year to get it.
So those would be the ones with the DSFR? or
Yeah,
what have you.
yeah.
Okay.
Any other comments before we move to the next item?
One last question, just kind of tied into the last item when we were talking about the rates. So, James, could you remind us the time frame that we're on as far as the rates, the capital plan and all that?
Sure. The capital plan, I believe there's, we want to see UPC approval for that. I don't think we have to do that today. We could probably do that at our next meeting. The capital plan is the component of rates, so we'd like to check off that as we go into rates. We are planning to have rates before the city commission, the 2 meetings in October. That would get rates done before the election. There could be some change of the makeup of the board on elections, and our city commission, those new members, if there is any change in elections, they become members immediately at the next meeting. So, we would like first and second meeting in October to kind of take this to city commission. So that gives us the September UPC meeting that, we'd like to have a rate recommendation action in that meeting and action on the capital plan in that meeting as well.
Thank you. Next item under capital is the youth sports complex for an introduction to what that project is. There was a question that came to me, and so just ask for a brief overview from the city.
Sure, I can share with what I know, which is, not much. We have an understanding of what property or what parcels that complex is gonna be situated on. It's kind of, along the very west end of the city, north of West Main. Also looks like it's probably gonna include parcels that are in Oshtemo Township. I'm not 100% detailed on that, but it could be a property that is kind of both in city and in Oshtemo. We've had projects like that in the past. We don't have any water main sizing requirements yet. We haven't got that far through any of the design or conversations with the owners at this point. So we don't have any idea on what size pipe they may need. It is at a location that would ideally suit a loop because there's already kind of a large main that runs north up to where some of those properties are that serve several hotels and restaurants in that area that does connect to West Main. And then that property is directly adjacent to Beach, and on Beach we have a large water tower that supports Northwest High Pressure District. So depending on what size main they need, and if this is an opportunity for a loop, we may want to come back and ask for an oversizing agreement to extend a transmission loop through that property, through that complex, and kind of make a loop connection of the system.
Any questions or? Thank you. Next item is an update on the UPC per diem compensation, and this was something that this group voted on several months ago, and so this is follow-up to see if that's been implemented for the per diem for those members who are not otherwise compensated.
Yeah, so this has not been on a commission agenda, which I think it has to go to the commission. Is that accurate relative to our operating agreement, so to speak? Do you know, Peter?
It's my understanding that it was a city
Yeah, I
requirement.
think it was
A city requirement?
well, it was a city had to determine what they had to do or what they could do.
Yeah, I briefly recall, and I'd have to check back with Attorney Leal. I believe our recommendation for, to kind of achieve that goal would be to determine that, any member not currently receiving compensation, what most of the members are, that we evaluate whether or not they could be determined as a professional member, and then just have them invoiced at a professional rate. The per diem was a little bit different in that no city boards receive a per diem, other than city commissioners are paid a small amount.
Right.
But the city doesn't pay,
So it's
Natural
gotta
Features
go through
Protection
the city.
Board or something else. So I think that would have to be brought back to Attorney Leal.
Is this a city board?
It's not a legally separate entity, it's
Right,
really
I mean,
kind of
the
advisory to the.
water system is a function of the city.
True enough.
So any actions of this board would reflect upon the city.
Okay.
So does it make sense for some further research with your attorney to see?
I think
Can or couldn't be done?
to get
or-
to the point of, compensation, I think we've got to just zero back in with the attorney.
Thanks for following up on that.
Thank you. Then the next item on the agenda is the Galesburg North 35th Street franchise agreement. Again, this is for an update if there's any.
As I understand it, the city staff was going to pursue how to put this together.
Sure.
But
We-
you weren't,
That's
you
what
weren't
that's
here
what
when we
the
did.
minutes said last time.
We support it, it makes sense. It's probably, we'd like some UPC, support of it, just to say, hey, the UPC supports the franchise agreement as shown, and we could potentially execute that with Galesburg and Comstock. I don't know, that portion of Comstock that's already served by Galesburg Water, I'm not familiar with an agreement that I've seen. I'm sure one exists, but.
So there was a motion at the last meeting to approve a Galesburg North 35th Street franchise agreement and request the city to move forward with the necessary next steps.
Okay.
And that's in the minutes. I know you weren't here, so. If that was what you were looking for.
Yeah, I think that satisfies everything that we need, and we'll start talking to Comstock Township, so we can talk to Scott Hess, and we can start talking to Galesburg to see what kind of agreements that we need.
Just to reiterate, they're both in full support.
Okay.
So it's just a matter of whatever agreement, amendment to the existing franchise needs to happen.
Okay. Is there anything in the water services agreement is there anything that we need to do with respect to the water services agreement with this item?
That's a good question, and we need to take a look at that.
Okay.
And I mean, that's a question for the city attorney as well.
Because the water services agreement that was agreed by everybody, must have recognized that existing Galesburg franchise.
Yeah.
Because that was separate.
Because it's separate, yeah.
And we're just recognizing a little different boundary,
Sure.
so, but it
And
probably
there's,
would be.
yeah, there's provisions in there for growth. So this would be like a growth of the system.
Or actually not.
Yeah.
Maybe, it might actually reduce what the city was serving. With Galesburg taking a couple parcels. I
Well,
think
but-
there's an appendix in the agreement that said like, kind of, this is where you are, you can grow.
No, I think you can grow anywhere in
Yeah,
the.
yeah, but I mean, this says this is where you are. Isn't there a map? I don't know. I can't recall. We could we ask Tim,
Yes.
Libby? And
Yeah,
it
yeah.
might be as easy as asking Tim and just let you know. I mean, I don't think it's it's just crossing the T or dotting the I. I don't think there's any question that this should or would like to be happening.
Yeah, there is an appendix that shows the water, it's a kind of a blue map of the water system as it is. And where some, I believe when the map was drafted, where we thought some expansion was
Might.
likely to occur.
Yeah.
And maybe we just need to update that.
Next item then is new business, professional service invoice approvals. And we have,
I move approval of the invoice number 00108 from Main and Meridian for about $449.25.
Second that?
there's a motion to approve the Main Meridian invoice as described. Motion by David Anderson, second by Peter Hafner. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain, Jeff.
Motion carries with 6 approvals and 1 abstention.
I move approval of a Hefner Group LLC invoice number 1059 in the amount of $1,242.80.
There's a motion by David Anderson to approve the Hefner Group invoice as described. Motion by David Anderson, second by Will Rollins. And all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain, Hefner?
Motion carries 6 with 1 abstention. 6 approvals and 1 abstention.
I move approval of Brian Newhoff invoice number 90672, amount of $614.40.
There's a motion by David Anderson and second by John Crum to approve the Prine and New invoice as described. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain.
Motion carries 6 ayes and 1 abstention. Thank you for that business item. And then item 8 is committee member, alternate, attendee, guest comments. Anyone wishing to comment this morning? I'll start with.
Yeah, I'll take the opportunity. Again, excellent meeting and discussion, and Mayor Anderson, I'd like to compliment you for raising some insightful questions, which opened up some very good dialogue with everybody here, and especially some of your professional advisors, Danica, Peter especially, and James. I'll just say, great discussion, spot on, everybody. From my perspective, I've spent probably the majority of my professional career in basically data-based decision-making for public investment, utilities, in particular municipal utilities. And you have that information and that's wonderful, and I see you as policy makers, decision makers, getting into the weeds, and you've got the help of your professionals to help you understand that, and it's just so wonderful for me to witness that. And it's like night and day too with respect to the data that's available to make decision makings. And I want to compliment the city. It's James in particular. It's as I say, night and day difference in what's available for you to evaluate. A lot of it is new technology. You now have the resources, cost-effective resources to collect the data, but even then, to massage and understand it does take professionals' assistance. So, take some investment, some expenditure to get the information to make the savings. So it's just wonderful, and I just want to compliment everybody on that process because it is quite exceptional. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that in the 26 years that I've been supervisor for Cooper and where we were when I started and where we are now, it is definitely a breath of fresh air. And I can honestly say when I see David or James or anybody from the city, I consider them an acquaintance and a friend that we shake hands, and it's awesome. It really is. And I would also like to welcome Mr. Marquardt to your team and our team, and hopefully that we can get to know each other a little better and work together. And the only other thing I will say is I would like you all to put a date on your calendar, November 6th. It is our annual MTA banquet. I would like to see every one of you here and attend. It's going to be at the Fountains and Parchment. We have a great speaker and presenter that is totally non-political. It has to do with what happens in the sky and what falls from it. So, and it's Bill Steffen, who used to be the weather person years ago from ZZM. He's quite a dynamic individual, and he has agreed to put on a presentation for us about the history of the weather that we have had in the Kalamazoo area and the Michigan area. So I know it's a little early, but we will put that on your calendar. We'd love to make sure that you're there, and thank you so much for letting me attend.
Thank you, Jeff. Anna, anything?
Nothing today. Thanks, Lily.
Thank you.
Just talking about meters. Our unit of the government went through getting a new meter. And when they installed it, the guy said, oh, they rewired this wrong from the factory and then changed it. But you were using the meter, and then all of a sudden we did our cross-section report and saw the volume down. And we thought, oh God, is it just because of the water, or the year, or seasonal, or anything else? Well, we found out and tried to double check and found out that the meter was not reading right. And then after that time, after a year, we were not charging our customers enough because of the meter that wasn't properly restoring that. I guess I'm getting to James. James, these smart meters you're putting in, are they reading different than some of the old ones? And do you see it a little different overall in the whole city, or?
There's some different meter technology. Your meter at the Climax lift stations is a mag meter, and so that uses a little bit different technology than the smart meters, which are mutating discs. So there's some different technology between the two meter types, but overall the meters that we're putting in, those mutating discs, are very accurate. They're very precision. They even measure low flow. They don't have a lot of wiring issues. It's pretty much a solid state device. It's got 3 wires that go to a unit that transmits that data out to us. Those inline flow meters in sewage applications can be a little finicky. We have experienced some of that finikiness in some of the meter applications, but we continue to stand behind it and support you on that. So, we'll work through and resolve, any issues that might come up. That is something overall in wastewater that does come up from time to time wastewater can be particularly difficult to meter. Kinda got, you need a force main, if there's any air pockets in that, that can be problematic. Sometimes there can be growth, slimes, that sort of thing on the meters that are problematic. Partial flumes are the other type of meter, those are for gravity, but those can get debris and things in them as well. So that's always a little bit of a pursuit of precision on the wastewater side that sometimes we don't ever get there. But no, thanks for those comments.
This meter was on our water system that we had. And by the time we sent it to California and got it back, we had to shut down the whole that well, because it wasn't giving us any reading. And we weren't, if we did, we weren't gonna charge our people enough.
Oh, okay, there's a wastewater, yeah. I think we have some meter issues with your Climax meter on the wastewater side too, so.
And I was more in the water.
Water and your water, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. David, anything?
No comments other than just grateful for the opportunity to meet all of you this morning. I'll see you some more in the future. But also grateful for the opportunity to work alongside some really incredible colleagues like Anna, James, and Mayor Anderson. So just pleased to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone online, any comments? And I want to thank Annika, Anish, and the team at Stantec for the information today. Might have jumped off.
Hi, Libby.
Thanks, Sherry.
I just wanted to comment on the youth sports complex. So Oshtemo, Oshtemo has a seat at the table on the new authority. That project is still going through its very early infancy steps. We just had our first meeting, so there's still a lot of information and planning to be done. I do know if this group is interested, Jane Ghosh from Discover Kalamazoo, they held that project for a long time until the authority was started up, but I'm sure she would be willing to come and share the details about the project if anyone was interested, either at this group or in their community. But just the conversations between the city and Oshtemo and the new authority regarding public utilities have already started in their infancy stage. And so certainly road connectivity, water connectivity, and wastewater and all that good stuff. There's, I anticipate, going to be really good collaboration between the city, the authority, and Oshtemo as far as how to make that move forward successfully.
Thank you. Anyone else online? Hearing none, any board member comments? Tom?
Good. Just one thing, talking about rates overall, and I know we're just talking about water here, but of course the rate increase includes wastewater.
So there will be a conversation on wastewater. Some of us that are in that negotiation process, we're gonna be presenting some work that the rate consultant has done to that group today yet. So there'll be some conversations on that. And then that schedule for rates that I talked about to the city commission in October will also include a wastewater rate recommendation. So yeah, thank you for that, Mayor.
Yeah, so that will ultimately affect the overall rate,
Yeah,
which is
correct.
not something
Yeah.
we really discussed here, but part of the decision-making process. And just as a reminder for me, I think you told me before, because we were looking about that, you know, the small water use on the industrial side here, but on the wastewater side, I think we take more industrial wastewater than maybe way above average than what a normal system might deal with. Is that accurate? So is there?
Sure, there's, the charts are almost completely flipped on the wastewater side.
So the big bar part is gonna be industrial wastewater.
Correct.
you said.
There's, we have 2 customers that represent 25% of our demand and, kind of, expense and cost, so those are pretty balanced. From the retail districts that we recognize in wastewater, we have wholesale communities and retail communities, so that's a little bit different. But just looking at the retail communities, in-city customers and out-city customers are pretty balanced. We've got about 25% of the system in retail City of Kalamazoo customers and about 25% of the system as retail out-city customers. And then, we've got some other larger municipalities that are wholesale and some, other industrial users. On the wastewater side, we've got about 65 industrial users that are, producing larger loads to the treatment plant, higher strength waste, things of that nature need to be monitored. 14 of those 65 are really big, and 2 of those 65 are big enough to really take over 25% of that pie. So if you think about it, all the citizens of Kalamazoo are equal to 2 customers on the industrial side.
Thank you. I have no other comments other than to say thank you for coming today, attending, and a lot of good discussion. Our next meeting is September 11th, same time and same location. So we have exhausted the agenda and we are adjourned.
Next week.